Picture this. It's the late 17th century. Europe is a chaotic patchwork of rival kingdoms, petty squabbles, and shifting alliances. Politically divided and militarily drained, the continent is vulnerable. And right at its heart lies Vienna, a city that's more than just a capital. It's the gateway to Central Europe, a strategic choke point on the mighty Danube River. Control Vienna, and you hold the key to the German states and the Italian peninsula. Now, turn your eyes eastward to the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, since the 1300s, it has been an unstoppable force, expanding across North Africa, the Middle East, and into the Balkans. To the Sultans, Vienna isn't just a city, it's a symbol. They call it the Golden Apple, the ultimate prize that would herald the conquest of the West. They had tried to take it once before, back in 1529, under the legendary Suleiman the Magnificent. But bad weather and overstretched supply lines forced them to retreat. The dream, however, never died. By 1683, the time felt ripe for another attempt. The Ottomans looked at the bickering European powers and saw an opportunity. The internal rivalries, they believed, would prevent anyone from coming to Vienna's aid. This was their moment to strike and finally pluck the golden apple. The man tasked with this monumental invasion was the Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha. On the surface, the Ottoman Empire was still a behemoth, a colossal power stretching over 3.5 million square kilometers from North Africa to the Persian Gulf. But beneath this intimidating exterior, cracks were starting to show. The empire had recently suffered military setbacks against Spain, Venice, and Persia. Kara Mustafa, ambitious and eager to restore Ottoman glory, saw the conquest of Vienna as his path to legendary status. He assembled a truly staggering army, one of the largest of the era. Estimates range from 120,000 to 150,000 men. This wasn't just a mob, it was a well-oiled military machine. It included the legendary Janissaries, the Sultan's elite infantry, feared across the world. There were the Sipahi, the empire's formidable heavy cavalry. They were joined by their fierce allies, the Crimean Tatars, and supported by massive heavy artillery units capable of turning city walls to dust. But Kara Mustafa had a very specific vision for his victory. He didn't want to conquer a pile of rubble. He wanted to capture Vienna intact, a glittering jewel to present to his sultan, a testament to Ottoman grandeur. This desire to preserve the city led him to a cautious approach. He decided against an all-out, destructive bombardment. It was a decision that would prove to be a catastrophic strategic mistake. In the spring of 1683, this immense force began its march from the Ottoman-controlled Balkans. The campaign was on. By July, the seemingly endless columns of Ottoman soldiers arrived at the gates of Vienna, surrounding it completely. The city was trapped. Inside the walls, the situation was dire. The city's defense was led by Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, a tough and experienced commander. But his garrison numbered only about 15,000 men. They were outnumbered at least 10 to 1. As the Ottoman standards were planted outside the walls, a sense of dread fell over the city. The Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold I, seeing the writing on the wall, fled with his court, first to Linz and later to Passau. His departure sent a clear message: Vienna was on its own. Europe's response was fragmented. The German princes were paralyzed by indecision. Some feared the unstoppable Ottoman advance, but others were just as wary of the Habsburgs, fearing that a victory would only make their rival Emperor Leopold even more powerful. It seemed the Ottoman calculation was correct. Europe was too divided to act. But far away in Rome, Pope Innocent V saw the invasion for what it was, an existential threat to Christendom. He declared the conflict a holy war, a new crusade to defend the faith. He opened the Vatican's coffers, providing crucial funding to unite the fractured Catholic states into a holy league. The most critical piece of this new alliance was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Papal envoys worked tirelessly to persuade its king, John III Sobieski, to join the fight. Sobieski was no ceremonial monarch, he was a brilliant and battle-hardened commander, already famous for his victories against the Ottomans. After intense negotiations and the promise of papal gold, he agreed. Sobieski mobilized around 27,000 Polish troops, including his most famous and feared unit, the legendary Winged Hussars. With this, the battle lines were drawn not just in military terms, but in religious ones. For the European coalition, this was a holy crusade to save Christianity. For the Ottomans, it was a jihad to expand the dominion of Islam. The fate of a continent hung in the balance. The siege of Vienna officially began on July 14, 1683. The Ottomans immediately set to work, employing the cutting-edge siege tactics of the 17th century. Their engineers dug a complex network of trenches, zigzagging their way toward the city walls to protect soldiers from gunfire. Sappers tunneled underground, planting powerful mines to blow breaches in the fortifications. Day and night, their artillery pounded the defenses. By late August, several of the city's outer bastions had been reduced to rubble. Inside Vienna, life became a living hell. Food supplies dwindled rapidly. The city was soon in the grip of famine. Starving citizens were reduced to eating cats, dogs, and rats. Disease ran rampant. Typhus and dysentery swept through the crowded, unsanitary streets, claiming lives just as surely as Ottoman cannons. The combination of starvation, sickness, and constant bombardment created a nightmare of suffering for soldiers and civilians alike. Count von Starhemberg, the city's commander, ruled with an iron fist, enforcing strict discipline to prevent the city's defense from collapsing into chaos. He knew that any sign of weakness would be fatal, but morale was plummeting. The people were exhausted, sick, and hopeless. Yet, despite the unimaginable hardship, the defenders refused to surrender. They held on, praying for a miracle. Meanwhile, outside the walls, the mighty Ottoman army was facing its own crisis. Their massive logistical network, stretching hundreds of miles back to the Balkans, was beginning to fail. It was an incredible challenge to keep such a huge army supplied. Foraging parties sent into the countryside found the land picked clean. Soon, the Ottoman soldiers were starving, just like the people they were besieging. Their horses, crucial for cavalry and transport, died in droves from lack of fodder. Desertion became a serious problem as morale within the Ottoman camp crumbled. Kara Mustafa's obsession with preserving Vienna continued to haunt him. His caution, his refusal to launch a final decisive assault, gave the Christian coalition the one thing they desperately needed: time. And that time was not being wasted. In August 1683, King John III Sobieski began his epic march from Krakow. It was a monumental undertaking. The Polish parliament, the Sejm, had initially resisted funding the expedition, so Sobieski, driven by a sense of duty, paid for much of it out of his own pocket. He gathered supplies, hired wagons, and pushed his army forward at a record pace. In just 3 weeks, an incredible feat of logistics and determination, the Polish army crossed the mighty Danube River and joined the Allied forces assembling to relieve Vienna. The coalition was now a formidable force. In total, around 80,000 soldiers gathered. This included Sobieski's 27,000 Poles, about 30,000 Habsburg and Imperial troops, and another 20,000 German soldiers from states like Bavaria, Saxony, and Franconia. The entire effort was lubricated by the Pope's subsidies. To avoid the squabbles that had plagued so many European alliances, the commanders made a crucial decision. They needed a single, unified command. In a remarkable show of unity, they named the Polish king, John III Sobieski, as the supreme commander of the entire relief army. Their battle plan was simple but brilliant. The Austrians and Germans would form the anvil, engaging the main Ottoman force frontally and pinning them in place. The Poles, led by Sobieski himself, would be the hammer, striking from the flank and delivering the decisive blow. To execute this plan, the relief army had to do the impossible: approach the Ottoman camp without being detected. Their route lay through the Wienerwald, the dense Vienna woods. These thick forests, covering a series of steep ridges known as the Kahlenberg and Leopoldsberg, overlooked the entire Ottoman encampment. The terrain was treacherous, considered impassable for a large army with artillery. This is precisely why the Allies chose it. The woods would hide their movements from Ottoman scouts. During this tense period, a Polish merchant and diplomat named Jerzy Franciszek Kulczycki became a hero. He spoke fluent Turkish, and disguised as an Ottoman soldier, he bravely slipped through the enemy lines multiple times, carrying vital messages between the besieged city and the approaching relief army, keeping hope alive. Unseen and unheard, the Allied forces slowly maneuvered into position, setting up their devastating pincer movement. The stage was set. The hammer was about to fall on the anvil. The fate of Vienna, and perhaps Europe itself, would be decided in a single day, September 11th, 1683. As dawn breaks over the ridges surrounding Vienna, a vast coalition army takes its position. Soldiers from the Holy Roman Empire, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and various German states look down upon the Ottoman forces besieging the city. Religious services are held, prayers echo across the hills as tens of thousands of men prepare for a battle that will decide the fate of a continent. Down below, the exhausted defenders of Vienna, having endured a brutal 2-month siege, brace for what they believe will be the final overwhelming Ottoman assault. They are unaware of the massive relief force that has just arrived. The next day, September 12th, the Ottoman army continues its siege operations as usual. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa, confident in his numbers, remains oblivious to the full strength of the coalition army gathering on the high ground. He believes he can crush the relief force and take the city simultaneously. It is a fatal miscalculation. Around midday, the battle begins. Austrian, Bavarian, and Saxon troops descend from the hills, slamming into the Ottoman front lines. The air fills with the deafening roar of cannons and the crackle of thousands of muskets. The fighting is fierce, a desperate struggle for every inch of ground. But the Ottoman lines are stretched dangerously thin. A significant portion of their best troops, the Janissaries, are still stuck in the trenches, committed to the siege of Vienna. They are now trapped between the city walls and the advancing coalition army. As the battle rages, communication within the sprawling Ottoman camp begins to break down. Orders are lost and units become isolated. The organized military machine begins to sputter. As the afternoon sun hangs low in the sky, King John III, Sobieski of Poland, surveys the battlefield from the Kallenberg Heights. He sees the Ottoman forces in disarray, their lines wavering. He knows the moment has come. He assembles his elite cavalry, creating the largest cavalry force ever seen in European history. About 18,000 horsemen, a thundering sea of steel and flesh. At 6 p.m., the signal is given. Sobieski, at the head of his legendary Polish Winged Hussars, leads the charge. The sight is both terrifying and magnificent. Thousands of heavily armored horsemen, their iconic wings howling in the wind, cascade down the slopes like an avalanche. They are supported by Austrian cuirassiers and German cavalry, forming a single, unstoppable wave of destruction. The impact on the exhausted and disorganized Ottoman ranks is devastating. The charge smashes through their lines, shatters their morale, and plows directly into the heart of their camp. Command tents are trampled, and the Grand Vizier's personal standard is captured. The Ottoman army, which had seemed invincible just hours before, completely collapses. Chaos erupts. It is no longer a battle, it's a rout. Soldiers throw down their weapons and flee in a desperate panic. Seeing his army disintegrate before his eyes, Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa grabs what he can and flees with his personal staff, abandoning his troops to their fate. Vienna was saved. The aftermath is a scene of utter carnage. Tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers are killed, wounded, or captured. The ground is littered with the spoils of what was once one of the wealthiest armies in the world. In contrast, the Allied losses are remarkably light, numbering only a few thousand. The city of Vienna, on the brink of annihilation, is liberated. The news of the victory spreads like wildfire across Europe, sparking celebrations from Rome to Paris. For the defeated Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha, there is no escape. A few months later, on the Sultan's orders, he is executed in Belgrade by strangulation with a silk cord, the traditional punishment for high-ranking failures. His spectacular failure at the gates of Vienna cost him his life. The historical impact of this single battle cannot be overstated. The Battle of Vienna marked the definitive turning point in the centuries-long conflict between the Ottoman Empire and Christian Europe. It halted the Ottoman advance into the heart of the continent for good and began a long, slow period of decline for the empire that would last for over a century. The victory massively strengthened a sense of European unity, forged under a shared Christian identity against a common foe, King John III. Sobieski was hailed as a hero across the continent, forever earning the title Savior of Vienna. His Winged Hussars, who led the decisive charge, became legendary, their reputation cemented as Europe's most unstoppable cavalry. The battle created a powerful myth that endures to this day, the story of how Europe was once saved from the East. Historians still debate the precise reasons for the victory. Was it Sobieski's brilliant leadership, the tactical blunders of Kara Mustafa, the superior strategy of the coalition, or simply an act of faith? Perhaps it was a combination of all these things. Ultimately, the Battle of Vienna is remembered as the high watermark of Ottoman power. It stands as a profound symbolic victory for European resilience and cooperation. The dramatic story of the siege, the charge, and the liberation has inspired countless works of art, legends, and myths. It is remembered as the day Europe was saved and remains one of history's greatest and most consequential turning points. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. We'll see you in the next one.